Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. Each week, we share practical spiritual insights designed to support your growth, helping you live with more clarity, compassion, and intention. Wherever you're listening from, we're glad you're here. Let's begin.
So let's welcome. I have a mental block, Cheryl Cattell.
Not to worry. I have many mental blocks. So, as my mother-in-law used to say, George, and we'd say, no, Mom, his name is Joe, and she says, that's what I'd call him. She was never wrong, right? So I just want to acknowledge the band. They were not able to find the sheet music or the arrangements for the song. That was written by a dear friend of mine who lives in Bali. So when I requested the sheet music, it was a day before she saw my request. So they did an amazing job, didn't they? It's one of my favorite songs. So thank you guys. Excellent. Excellent. Well, today's talk, I am going to ask at the end for you to consider how you can be brave. Because as we look at the topic of fear, that's what it requires, is bravery to do something in the face of fear. So I have a liberating idea for you today. Fear is just a bad habit. It's not a life sentence. It's not a permanent condition. It's not a force or a power of its own. It's a habit of thinking that we've learned at a very young age, and we've kept practicing it. A lifetime of practice. We've created our own comfort zone with our fears, and we let them dictate our life. So at CSL, we know that fear is just a learned pattern. We know that all thought is creative. The creative essence is a core principle of this belief. And so what are we creating? Whatever we consistently think we experience, when we repeatedly feel our fears, we reinforce them. So what we rehearse internally becomes the outer reality. And so fear will show up again and again in our lives. So next slide, Ray. I love this quote. I love Emerson, by the way. He's one of my favorite influences on Ernest Holmes. And he says, fear always springs from ignorance. Well, is he calling me stupid? No, what he was saying is ignorance, the way that we define, is a lack of awareness of who we really are. If we are God manifest, what is there to fear? So it's the ignorance of who and what we are here to do, who we are here to be. When we forget this, we forget our unity with divine life, and fear will rush in and fill up the gap. Fear is not an entity of its own, it's a conclusion. It is a prediction of a thought. Now, during COVID, there was a lot of fear. Right here, I lost my parents, both of my parents, to COVID within a few months. And so I know that fear gripped me very close. And since then, I started working with a company called Lyra Health, because I was in the hospitality industry as a digital marketing person, and hospitality, as you know, everything's shut down. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do I make sense of this? And so 6 years later, 3,000 hours of mental health coaching, over 300 clients, I know one thing. Fear can be traced back as the root of every single negative emotion negative feeling and negative experience. This I know. I have proof. And bliss is every connection to the divine, to our higher self, to the executive functions. I'm pointing up here. This is my prefrontal cortex. How many of you got to see Reverend Cindy Grimes? She showed us our brains, right? Not on acid, but we just got to see our brains, right? So she talked about all of our executive functions, the connection with spirit, the connection with our higher self, problem solving, creativity. All of the good stuff is up here. However, fear is coming from a different part, the amygdala, I think I call it the lizard brain. Ever heard lizard brain? See a couple, the reptilian brain, right? That is a very primitive, that's been with us since when our brains were about that big, because that's all there was. That was it. So this idea of emotions they've measured it. Emotions can be measured as a chemical release into the body that lasts 60 seconds. That's it. 60 seconds. Now, what do we do with that? Okay, that's all the difference in the world. That determines how we experience life. What we do with that emotion will determine if we are living in hell or joy. We get to decide, not what happened, not the external factor. Raymond, if you could go next. It's one of my, also, Viktor Frankl. The space between stimulus and response exists a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. And in that response, we can choose growth and freedom or fear. Right? I mean, it makes sense. Now, the space. Let's talk about that space. I'm going to tell you that space is why I'm here. It is cultivated through the spiritual practices that this teaching not only talks about, but we have workshops. Tony is going to give you all the information you need to make that space count. Affirmative prayer. Meditation is all the things. We're going to have a meditation workshop and teach you everything you need to know about making that space count, where you take back control from the fear that might be gripping you or about to pounce, right? We cultivate that space through deep breathing, through mindfulness, emotional awareness, so that we can move from reactive behaviors to intentional, growth-oriented responses. That's why I'm here. Going through the practitioner program gave me 2 years daily spiritual practices, and hallelujah, it made all the difference in the world. I got the opportunity to choose how I responded instead of letting my fear take over my life. But let's explore this concept, this idea of fear. Let's go back to the lizard brain. So when our brains were about this big, we were running around and we had only one thing we were looking for, and that was survival, right? We needed to be on the lookout for saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths, who knows, right? Asteroids hitting the Earth, right? Those are the things that we were responding to. So this reptilian brain is very primitive. I'm going to tell you, it really has one response, fear, but it looks 2 different ways. It's either flight, I'm running away as fast as possible. I stop and put my shoes on so I can outrun this guy, right? Flight or fight. And we've seen both, right? We've seen the fear response, and we see that fear response in our leadership right now. I am so scared to death, I'm going to bomb you, right? Right? That's all it is. It is the fight response. But the problem is today, and I just want to say, that, and I'm going to point, this is my prefrontal cortex, this is my divine self, this is my lizard brain. When we participate in the fear, it flips our lid. You ever hear somebody say, I couldn't think straight. I couldn't find the words. I said things I didn't mean. Guess what? You're not thinking. What this does is it releases into the body enough cortisol and adrenaline for you to be able to pick up a car off of a baby if it's yours. And that's just if somebody cuts me off in traffic. Right? This doesn't have a governor. It's all or nothing, sweetheart. You are totally giving into this fear. And you don't have any control. It flips your lid and you are just filled with toxic chemicals at toxic levels. A little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of cortisol, that doesn't compute to this. So you have, like I said, most of what we're responding to is not a charging animal. We don't know the difference. If we listen to this alarm repeatedly, there's medical research, a wonderful book, Mind Over Medicine. If we keep letting that fear, that cortisol and adrenaline keep pushing and pushing and pushing us, we are going to attack our immune systems, okay? We will eventually show up in physical dis-ease because there's no place else for that adrenaline and cortisol to go. So we're in New Thought, here at CSL, we invite you to go from reaction to revelation. Ask yourself, is this fear protecting me or preventing me? Is it guiding me or ruling and restricting me? Well, many times fear will disguise itself as wisdom, right? Well, I'm the only reason you've gotten as far as you have, sweetheart, so just deal with it, right? It's really not the truth. It's not the truth. It says things like, don't try, stay small, better safe than sorry, right? I heard that over and over again. Well, what are we safing ourselves from? What are we being safe from? From growth? From expansion? For becoming who we're really meant to be? God manifests. That's not fear. There's nothing to fear. Emerson said, and this is where bravery comes in, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. Why would that be true? Because fear depends on avoidance to survive. If you confront it with awareness and action, the illusion weakens, it melts. So, where in the world did I pick up this fear? For goodness sake, what was I thinking? Well, let me go back. And I'm going to invite all of you to go back with me on this journey. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was born to two parents who were very, very young, 16. And they really weren't ready to be parents. And so within less than a year, they divorced. And so there was this little girl who was trying to make sense out of the world, looking around. None of my friends are divorced. They all have parents, too. Why don't I have two parents? The birth of my fear. I'd like to introduce you to Judge Judy. She said to me, if you had been perfect, if you'd been a good little girl, they would never have gotten divorced. So therefore, I'm going to make sure you're always perfect. And no matter what you do, I'm going to show you what you did wrong. It doesn't matter how wonderful it was. It doesn't matter. I'm going to make your life a living hell. Thank you, Judge Judy, because she wanted to protect me, because that was my little mind trying to make sense of the world, and I didn't have all the good stuff, the prefrontal cortex that I've learned since is really what will protect me. So when you think about it, most of our fear responses are very childlike when viewed from our higher self. She told me that her perfection, her need to be perfect, was the only reason I succeeded in life. But giving this fear a name, and I want to invite you to do this. We say at Lyra Health, name it to tame it. And so when she shows up and I say, oh, Judge Judy, come here, sweetie. Let me put my arm around you. We're not going there now. That takes the power out of that fear in your life. What she needs right now from me is unconditional love, not more judgment, not me going, oh, there you go again. No. When I feel the physical indicators that she's coming or creeping up on me, I call her by name and I embrace her. I reassure her nothing bad is going to happen. Right? She's operating from a child's mentality that if your parents aren't together, you might end up on the street. And I tell her, I'm the adult now. I'm not going to throw you out. So I also ask her, please, sweetheart, please let go of all the energy you take from me with your fear. Give that back. Earn some trust. Give me that trust, and I will take that energy and convert it into something amazing. So that's what allows me to partner with the divine, to be able to access my executive function. So I want to ask each of you right now, what is the name that you would give that would embody your fear? Oh, typically it's a name, a childhood nickname, the name of your father or mother or someone that you used as a role model. Some of my clients call it the Hulk. Those are the ones that put their fists through the wall. Fight, right? Start to make, or Chicken Little, this is another one, Chicken Little, right? Oh my God, the sky is falling, the world is going to be coming to an end. My world is coming to an end. So step one, name it to tame it. And then reach out and build a trusting, loving relationship. This has been with you for a long time. She's been with me since I can remember. And so she's really like an old friend. And so I want to be gentle with myself and go only as fast as the slowest part of me feels safe to go. Recruit it to help you reframe and focus your mind. Introduce it to your loved ones. I'm going to introduce her to you today. I just said, this is Judge Judy, and she used to make me think that perfection was required. But she's no longer in charge of my life. If you see her acting out, Joe, would you just come and give her a hug? That's what she needs. So next. I love this picture. I show this picture to all of my clients, I think. The top is Judge Judy and how she views the world. Something happens, it gets dropped in my jar, and I feel like, I can't breathe, oh my God, what am I going to do? Right? And I think, well, if I'm just perfect, if I just work really hard and get perfect, and I can perfect this situation, then eventually it'll go away. But that's not the way life works. The truth of the matter is, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And so that battle on the bottom is all of the other people dealing with their Judge Judy, with their fears. And they're not going to change. But it's an invitation for me to grow my jar. So that eventually I don't have any problem breathing. And I can take more and more of what life has to give me and make a bigger jar. I can be growth-oriented. I can deliver on my purpose and grow and be a powerful role model for the big blob that just got dropped. Instead of fighting, instead of having Judge Judy, hey, Judge, come on, let's have a little match, a little boxing match, right? Let my fear go against your fear. Isn't that what we do? So much of the time, I go into a conflict situation and it's just like little kids fighting it out, right? So, fear is imagination that has been projected into the future without God. It is creative energy used to rehearse outcomes we don't want. So that same imagination that builds fear can build faith. Holmes says, life is a mirror that will reflect back to the thinker what they think into it. So if life is a reflection and I persistently give in to fear, that's what I'll see. It's not because the universe is punishing us. It's because consciousness creates experience. And so that's why I invite you, become more aware. Break that fear habit. Habits can be changed. Now, this is the good part. This is where you want to take away and say, well, okay, I got it. I don't want Judge Judy to run my life. How do I stop a bad habit? This is like a cigarette, right? My life was, I'm smoking my perfection cigarette before I even realized, oh, wait. Or a drink for an alcoholic. If I know Judge Judy, I know how to deal with her. Let me just go there, right? Well, even if we know it's killing us, we react before we realize it. Spiritual practices are your key. Spiritual practices are the way that you can replace bad habits with a go-to option. So my favorites. I teach box breathing. I highly recommend if you Navy SEALs have adopted this as part of their training because it allows them to survive life-threatening situations much more reliably. Box breathing. They just stop and do a box, right? I'm in a helicopter. My engine's on fire, right? The first response is, oh my God, I'm not ready to die. I'm not ready to die. And then you box breathe and you go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, there's a parachute, right? Because when we're in that fear, we can't think straight. So box breathing. You're going to have an opportunity to learn the most powerful tool available at CSL, affirmative prayer. Tony Diaz is going to give you the opportunity to learn how to write one, and they are life-changing. This is my most miraculous practice, and I highly recommend, even if you know how to write one, take the time, sit your fear down. There is nothing you need to rush off to go do that's more important than getting your life back. And affirmative prayer is a great way to do that. And then meditation. So, I've been practicing Judge Judy for decades. I need to practice box breathing. I do affirmative prayer every single day, and I meditate every day. That's what it takes to offset a lifetime of bad habits practice. So as we replace fear with our spiritual truth, fear will say, what if I fail? What if I fail? Faith says, what if I grow? The jar. Fear says, what if I lose? Faith says, what if I lose and find something even greater? Fear says, I can't handle this. And spirit whispers, you're not handling it alone. And so, as we think about the cost of habitual fear, consider what it has cost you. Opportunities not taken, conversations avoided, dreams delayed, love withheld. Fear shrinks the soul's expression. It convinces us to trade aliveness for perceived safety, predictability. Spiritual growth, however, always requires expansion beyond our comfort zone, the growth of the jar. If we wait to have no fear before we act, we may wait forever. However, if we act from truth, even while fear whispers. So courage is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to let fear decide. Each courageous act will weaken that habit. Next, Rainer. I love this image. Thank you, AI. And I love it because it reminds me of the story of the man, who fell off the cliff. And he was sliding down the face of the cliff, and he grabbed onto a branch. And the branch was holding him, but he could see it was pulling out from the roots. And he said, "Oh, God, Spirit, come to me, help me, tell me what to do." And he just heard two words: let go. And he said, "Is there anybody else up there?" Right? Isn't that what we do? No, that's not what my ego, that's not the vision I had. I saw angels coming in and sweeping me off. No, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. It's about making the choice, the decision to listen to your inner guide, to listen to Spirit within, no matter what it says, no matter what it presents, no matter what it looks like. You're not fighting fear. You are bravely retraining thought and action. And so as across the globe, we all celebrate Palm Sunday today, I want you to think about the bravery that it took for Jesus to triumphantly march into Jerusalem. I want you to think about the symbology here. He didn't go in with a stallion rearing up and pawing at the air. He wasn't in there with all the bravado. He didn't go in with a quarter horse so he could race out of there when the going got tough. No, he went in on a donkey, the epitome of peace and humility. He marched into the jaws of the lion without fear. So let's go forth. Let's all agree to be brave and do what Jana asks us to do. Ask yourself, what would you do today if you were brave? And so it is.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. If this episode supported you in any way, we invite you to stay connected. Listen again, share it with someone you care about, or simply carry what resonated with you into your week. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.